My girlfriend planted herself on another man's lap, locked eyes with me, and publicly called me insecure for not accepting it. She spent months making me the villain to our friends, until she called me sobbing about a damaged car, a missing laptop, and a truth she could no longer hide. I'm in my mid-20s. I work in logistics, nothing glamorous, but stable. Ella and I had been together for 3 years by the time this happened. The last 12 months we'd been living together in an apartment we shared. We met through mutual friends, moved at a reasonable pace, and for most of those 3 years I genuinely believed we were a good match. I want to be clear about something, because it matters for everything that comes after. I am not a jealous person. I've never gone through someone's phone. Never told a girlfriend who she could or couldn't spend time with. Never made a scene about a guy's night out or a male coworker. Ella had male friends when we met. She had male friends throughout our entire relationship. I never once asked her to cut anyone off or cancel plans. There was one thing I'd asked for. Early on, maybe 3 months in, I told her that what I needed in a relationship was simple. I didn't want basic respect to be something we had to negotiate publicly. That was it. Not a list of rules. Not surveillance. Just the understanding that if something felt disrespectful, we could talk about it without it becoming a performance in front of other people. She thought about it for a moment. Then she smiled and said, "That's kind of cute that you have feelings about it." I laughed. I let it go. I told myself she had a different communication style, that she was just being playful. I should have noticed that she never actually said she agreed. She'd mentioned Alex exactly once before that night. My friend Alex, the same tone you'd use for a coworker or a gym buddy. Nothing in her voice that flagged anything. I didn't ask follow-up questions. I had no reason to. The dynamic between us, if I'm being honest, had been slightly uneven for a while. Not dramatically off. Just she led socially. I held things together. I'd told myself that was how we balanced each other. She was outgoing. I was steady. It seemed fine. I'm not sure when being steady started meaning having no visible limits. But somewhere in those 3 years, those two things had gotten confused. The party was at a mutual friend's house, one of those semi-regular things where 30 people end up in a 2-bedroom apartment and someone's put together a bar out of a folding table and a cooler. I'd been at work later than expected, so I drove separately and told Ella I'd meet her there. She texted me a couple of hours earlier, "I'm getting a ride with Alex easier since you're coming from work." I said fine. That was the whole conversation. When I got there, she was already across the room. She was with him standing close, laughing, the kind of physical ease that usually takes a long time to build. I noticed it. I told myself I was reading into it. I got a drink, found David near the back, and we talked for a while about nothing in particular. I kept an eye on Ella the way you do when something feels slightly off, but you don't want to be the person who turns it into a thing. Then she crossed the room. Not toward me. She walked to where Alex was sitting on a couch in the living room and lowered herself onto his lap. It wasn't quick. She didn't perch there for a second before moving on. She settled in, got comfortable, and then she looked up and went looking for my eyes. That's the part I keep coming back to. She went looking for my eyes. I walked over and asked, quietly, if we could step outside for a few minutes. She said it. "Relax. If you can't handle me having male friends, that's your problem." She didn't move. A couple of people nearby caught it. Alex stayed seated. He didn't offer to get up. He just watched. I said okay. Went to the kitchen. Got another drink. Stayed for another hour. Talked to David a little more. Said hi to Jake on my way out. I didn't say goodbye to Ella. I walked home. She texted at 11:47 p.m. "You good?" I read it. Put my phone down. There was nothing to answer. Not because I was punishing her, because I'd already said the only thing I had. I walked home. It's about 20 minutes, and I didn't put music on. I just walked. I wasn't thinking about Alex. That surprised me a little. I kept waiting for myself to fixate on him, who he was, how long they'd known each other, what else might or might not be true, but that wasn't the thing sitting in my chest. The thing sitting in my chest was the word relax. I started thinking about the other times. About 8 months into the relationship, Ella posted a photo with someone I'd never seen before. No tag, no caption. I asked who it was, privately, just the two of us. She said, "You're not going to be one of those guys, are you?" I laughed. Said of course not. Dropped it. About a year ago, she told me she'd be home late after the fact, not before. I said, gently, that a heads up would be good, so I knew she was safe. She said I was checking up on her. I apologized. I'm still not sure why I apologized. And then, somewhere in the first 3 or 4 months of the relationship, she'd said it directly. Not as a conversation, just a statement, at dinner one night, like she was reading something off a menu. I don't do jealous boyfriends. I'd taken that as confidence. I'd found it attractive. Even someone who knew what she wanted, who had no patience for possessiveness or drama. I told myself I was exactly the kind of person she was describing. What I hadn't understood, what I was starting to understand on that walk, was that the statement was never about who she was. It was a rule she issued in month 2 that preemptively labeled any future reaction I might have as a character defect before I could even name it. Each incident on its own had been small enough to dismiss. And I had every single time. I'd let things go because I didn't want to be difficult, because I told myself I was being mature, because I genuinely wasn't trying to control anything. And every time I let something go, it got a little easier for her to hand the next thing to me the same way. That's how it works, I think. It's not that the other person is running a strategy. It's just that the behavior that goes unchallenged gets repeated, and repeated, and repeated. But together, those moments formed a shape. A puzzle, if you want to call it that, with pieces I'd been actively choosing not to look at. I'd been so committed to not being that guy that I'd handed her the label to use on me anyway. The party wasn't an escalation. It wasn't Ella getting worse. It was just the first time she did it in public, with other people standing there, and looked me in the eyes while she did it. And something about being seen by David, by Jake, by the people who caught her line meant I couldn't talk myself out of it this time. That was the only thing that changed. By Monday morning, the version Ella was running had already reached people. David texted me first. He's a good friend, not someone who takes sides easily, and his message came in at 9:14 a.m. Hey, Ella says things got weird at the party. You okay? I called him back. I asked what she'd said. Exactly. He was careful about it. She'd told people that I got upset about her and Alex, that I'd made things uncomfortable, that I'd embarrassed her in front of everyone. I asked David if that's what he saw. There was a pause, long enough to be its own answer. He said, it got tense. I don't know the whole story. He wasn't agreeing with her. He wasn't contradicting her yet either. He was waiting. I understood that. I didn't push. What I took from that call was simple. She'd gotten there first. She'd had Saturday night and all of Sunday to frame what happened, and the frame she chose made her someone managing a difficult, jealous partner, not someone who did anything. The embarrassment in her version belonged to me. The problem in her version, the entire problem, was a guy who couldn't handle his girlfriend having male friends. It was a clean story, and she'd told it before I said a word. The text from Ella started Monday afternoon. First, are you seriously going to do this? Nothing from me. Tuesday, we've been together 3 years. You're really going to throw it away over nothing? Still nothing. Then Wednesday morning, I think you need to examine why you're so threatened by me having a life. I read every single one. Set my phone down each time. Not one of those messages asked what she'd done. Not one of them had the word sorry in it. Each one was about my reaction, my jealousy, my immaturity, my problem. 3 years, and every move she made was the same move. Name my reaction, never name her action. Sarah, I heard later, had been texting Ella back and forth throughout. Jake had gone quiet, the kind of person who waits to see where things land before saying anything. The unspoken expectation in our friend group was that I'd come around, reach out, apologize, and we'd move on. That was just the script for these situations. The problem was that I'd already said my line. Saturday night, in a house full of people. Okay. 2 days after the party, a message came in from someone I'll call Marcus, not a close friend, more of an acquaintance we both knew through the group. He and I had probably exchanged 10 messages in our lives. No explanation, just a link to Jake's Instagram story with a single line. Timestamp 047. Jake had posted general party footage. The kind of thing that gets uploaded without much thought. 30 seconds of crowd shots. A quick pan of the living room. Nothing specific. I wouldn't have gone looking for it. The moment was at 047. It ran about 12 seconds. In the background of the living room, Ella was standing, visibly animated, one hand gesturing. I was in the frame, maybe 6 feet from her, arms at my sides, completely still. Not advancing, not raising my voice or my hands, just standing there. Alex was still on the couch. He wasn't in the conversation, he was watching it. There was something on his face I didn't spend a long time trying to read. No audio. 12 seconds. I watched it twice. I saved it, put my phone in my pocket, and went back to what I was doing. Here's what the clip showed. A woman who was animated in public and a man who was standing still. That's it. But that was exactly the problem with the story. Ella had been running. Her version required me to be the one making a scene, the one who embarrassed her in front of everyone. The clip showed which of us was moving and which of us wasn't. I didn't need it as ammunition. I wasn't building a case. I just needed to know I hadn't misread the room. I called David that evening. Not to compare notes, not to show him the clip. I just wanted to talk. We covered the usual things for a while, and then after a pause he said something I hadn't asked for. Look, I was there. She was on his lap for a while. That wasn't nothing. He stopped. I don't know what else to tell you, man. But I saw it. He didn't say more than that. I didn't ask him to. I'd had the clip. I'd had the timestamp. But what David said offered on his own, with no prompting, because he was a person who couldn't leave it unsaid, was the thing that closed it. One friend. A plain, true sentence. No drama around it. I thanked him. We moved on to something else. I didn't bring it up again. I wasn't going to use any of it against her. That wasn't what it was for. I just needed to close a door without spending the rest of my life wondering if I'd overreacted. I hadn't. I didn't schedule a conversation. I didn't ask for a sit-down. I didn't draft a long message explaining everything I'd figured out. There was nothing to explain, and I'd learned, over 3 years, that explaining yourself to someone who has already decided what you are just gives them more material to work with. I went by her apartment on a Thursday afternoon. She wasn't home. I left her key in the mailbox with a note on a piece of notebook paper, not typed, not formal, just handwritten. Left your key. I think we want different things. Take care. I went home and changed my locks. Then I sent one text. I don't think we should keep going. I've returned your key. I wish you well. She called 4 times in the next hour. I let them go to voicemail. Then the texts. Are you serious right now? Over a party? No reply. You're being a child. No reply. Then, fine. But don't come back asking for another chance. I read all of them. Put my phone down each time. That last one almost made me laugh, not at her, just at the move. Even here, at the end, she was still trying to be the one who controlled the exit. As if I'd left because I was upset and might reconsider once I calmed down. As if the door was hers to close. The door had been closed since Saturday night. I called David the next day. Kept it short. Ella and I were done. He said, "Okay, I'm sorry, man." That was the whole conversation. I didn't tell anyone else. I didn't post anything. I made no effort to make sure the right people knew what really happened. A clean cut doesn't need an audience. 2 months went by. I stopped tracking the days at some point, which I think is the actual sign that you're moving on. Not that things stop hurting, but that you stop measuring. I muted her on everything. Not blocked. Muted. I didn't need to not see her. I just didn't need to see her. I went to work. Made dinner. Called my mother more than I had in a long time. Took back a few hours every evening that had previously been spent managing someone else's version of who I was. I heard, through the friend group, that her version of events was still circulating, but it had less air in it by then. Without me engaging, without me defending myself or correcting anyone, her story had nowhere to go. You need 2 people to keep a conflict alive. I'd stopped being one of them. Sarah called me about 2 months in. I wasn't expecting it. She said she wasn't calling to take sides. She said, I'm not going to say anything she'd kill me for. But she told me what actually happened, not the version she told everyone else. The real version. Before she started telling people you were the problem. She paused. I just thought you should know that some of us can tell the difference. She didn't say what Ella had told her. She didn't have to. What she was telling me was that Ella had run too many versions with too many people, and the ones who knew her well enough had started noticing the gaps. The story had moved too fast and in too many directions, and somewhere in that process, the seams started showing. I thanked her. We talked for a few minutes about something else, and that was it. I think about what that call cost. Sarah, how much easier it would have been to stay quiet and let things settle on their own. She called anyway. That meant something to me. 6 weeks after that, I almost didn't pick up an unknown number. It was a Thursday evening. I was making dinner. I pick up unknown numbers out of habit. Work calls sometimes come from numbers I don't have saved. So I answered. It was Ella. There was something in her voice I hadn't heard before. Not crying. Not angry. Something flatter than both controlled, but tight. Like she'd thought through what she was going to say and was monitoring herself closely to deliver it. She said, I know you probably don't care. But I didn't know who else to call. I didn't say anything. I listened. She told me that Alex had borrowed her car about 3 weeks earlier just for a quick errand, a few hours at most. He returned it with a dented rear panel and a cracked taillight. When she brought it up, he said it was already like that before he'd taken it. She'd lent him her laptop 2 weeks before that to fix a software issue. He still had it. He'd stopped answering her messages. And some jewelry she'd kept at his apartment, things she'd left there at various points without thinking about it, was gone. Not dramatically missing. Just not there anymore. She wasn't asking me for money. She wasn't asking me to do anything. She said she just wanted to say it. She didn't know who else to call. I let her finish. All of it. I didn't interrupt, didn't sigh, didn't say I knew this would happen because I hadn't, not exactly. I hadn't arranged any of this. It wasn't something I'd been waiting to feel good about. It was just what happened when Ella made choices about who she trusted with her time and her car and her apartment. Those were her choices. Alex was her choice. When she stopped talking, I let the silence hold for a second. Then I said, "I'm sorry that happened to you. That's not my problem anymore." And I hung up. I set my phone on the counter. The pasta was done. I drained it, put it in a bowl, and sat down at the table. I waited for something specific to arrive: relief, vindication, some sense that the score was settled. None of it came. What was there instead was quiet. The same temperature as the rest of the week. I think that was the answer. Not the absence of something. The absence of the static. After that call, the friend group finished rearranging itself without any drama. Nobody called a meeting. Nobody chose sides loudly. It just became clear, gradually, that the story Ella had been telling didn't have the traction she needed. David and I stayed in contact, coffee once in a while, same as before. He never brought the party up again. Neither did I. Sarah grew a little quieter in Ella's direction. I could tell from the way things settled without anyone having to explain it. Jake had posted his footage and moved on. Life continued at its own pace. I heard through a second-degree mutual contact that Ella was seeing someone new. I received this the way you receive weather updates for a city you no longer live in. It registered. It didn't require anything from me. About 2 months after the phone call, I met someone through a coworker. It started unremarkably. That was the first thing I noticed, how unremarkable it was. No testing in the first week. No games. No sense that I was being evaluated against some unspoken standard I hadn't been told about. She asked me once what I was thinking about, and she actually wanted to know. Not as a move, not as a check, just as a question. That sounds like a small thing. At that point in my life, it wasn't. I sat with it for a long time, the strangeness of someone just asking and meaning it. I thought about the word insecure a lot in those early months. The way Ella had used it, the way she'd needed it to apply to me so her choices could be explained as responses to my problem, rather than choices she made on her own. I thought about that guy. The controlling boyfriend she'd needed to exist so her version of events had somewhere to put the blame. I was never that person. I had one limit. One thing I'd asked for, quietly, in month 3 of a 3-year relationship. And I'd spent the rest of it minimizing it, reframing it, letting it go until the only thing left was a party where she sat on someone's lap and looked me in the eyes while she did it. I don't tell this story very often. There's not a lot to tell, honestly. No group chat explosion. No dramatic moment where everyone found out the truth at once. Things just stopped fitting together, and then they stopped. The clean cut isn't about not feeling it. I felt it. 3 years is 3 years, and it hurt the way things hurt when they actually mattered. The clean cut is about not dragging it. About knowing when a door is closed and not standing in the hallway pretending it might open again. She needed me to be that guy. The insecure one. The controlling one. The one whose reaction was always the problem. I just finally agreed to be him, and then I left.